And hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Taylorville, Illinois 2022 tour. As you might know, I have done other tours going all the way back to 1987, 88, and we did one in 2017, and they're all located on my website at dougquick.com, so you can check those out anytime. Well, we're starting out here pretty close to the high school, just west of Taylorville High School there along Springfield Road, a.k.a. Illinois Route 29. We're going to hang a left here on Cheney Street, North Cheney Street, and head to the south. Some of the landmarks there, we didn't go out to the Walmart area, but we did go by the Tasty Treat here on South Cheney Street, and former Alexander Lumber Company located there on the right. On the left, the FS plant. I remember Town and Country Hardware there, that building to the right. Did a few radio remotes there back when I was with WTIM. And my brother tells me that this area here, where the Kennedy plant used to be, was a major railroad yard for the CNIM back in the early days. Christian County Highway Department there on the left. And from the amount of bouncing around the vehicle is doing with the camera, it appears that Cheney Street may need a little work. My best friend there lived on the left-hand side. He passed away earlier this year. And as we continue moving southward, getting down into the Liberty Mutual, the old Liberty Mutual office building. They moved from the downtown area. My mom used to work for them above the old Woolworth store. And Harper's gas station there on the right. Before that, it was a trampoline jump. Remember that? The trampolines that were there? Well, let's go right on the old Illinois Route 48 by the old Green Gables. What's left of the Green Gables drive-in. Certainly not the picture that we saw back in the late 50s and early 60s of the Green Gables. And continuing along West Spresser, Illinois, the old Illinois Route 48. And we're coming up on Houston Street, one of the major west side thoroughfares, moving southward. Along Houston Street, out to the left, West School. That's where I went to kindergarten, as the Hewitttville School did not have kindergarten classes. And had Mrs. Howlett as a kindergarten teacher. Why I remember that, I do not know. And I don't remember where I left my wallet or my glasses, but I do remember that for some reason. And we're coming up on Main Cross, and I believe we're going to hang a right here out towards Illini Drive. And continuing toward the back gate for the Christian County Fair. Anybody ever sneak into the fair? That's one thing I never did, but made it more difficult when they put up the tall chain link fences. Never snuck into the fair. I guess that's one of those childhood things I just missed out on. Janes Park, there on the right, along Jane Street. And of course, the mansion there on the left. And my old boss lived on that corner. He had the house with all of the shingles, and I remember the stories that he would tell about how hard he had to work for every single one of those shingles on his house. Good guy, though. He hired me, got me into broadcasting, believe it or not. He was my first radio boss, and he was dean of boys at the high school when I was there. Going east on West Franklin Street, coming up on Houston Street here before we know it. Out to the left used to be a cable TV antenna for the Taylorville Cooperative Television Antenna. It was one of the first, actually, it was the first cable system in the state of Illinois. And that receiving tower was right there on the property that was owned by the Alexanders. Mrs. Alexander was my third grade teacher, by the way. And going down Houston Street, once again, heading southward, crossing Vanderveer Street. Some of the newer homes that have popped up there over the last 20 years or so. And continuing past one of the nursing homes there that's popped up on West Houston Street, or on South Houston Street. And we're getting pretty close to my old neighborhood here. I think we're going to hang a left onto Prairie Street, which is right here. And we're going to continue out to the east and coming up on Elevator Street. And I lived in what is now a gray house with white trim and a lot of windows across the front of the porch. And there it is, just a glimpse of that. Mr. Thornton, high school math teacher, lived there in the yellow house. And we're coming up on the old South School, which was built in the late 60s. And I think they had some subsidence issues with that building, but they also reorganized the school district, so it has now been made into some apartments as we cross Cheney Street once again. And this is the area that was hard hit by the tornado of December 1st of 2018. A lot of these homes were significantly affected by that tornado, with some not being rebuilt, but most of these were all rebuilt, remanufactured, reconstructed, whichever way you want to describe it, but they actually look much better now. And some weren't even rebuilt at all. Coming up here on the end of Prairie Street and Shumway, the site of the old Inslee's, the site of the old Inslee's Standard Station, right there on the corner. I used to get my bicycle tires pumped up there with their air compressor as we head now eastward once again along 2nd Street. If you look real close, you can see the bricks in the center where the old streetcar used to run. Those bricks were probably laid more than 100 years ago, and street needs some major reconstruction. I sort of go both ways when it comes to the brick streets. I think they're very quaint, and they do last a long time, but boy, they can be a real rough ride. And coming into, I believe this is Clay Street. Or no, that's Webster Street, I'm sorry. And we're coming up on the depot. It's been a while since I've lived there. I've lost some of the names of the streets over the years. Going by the old Wabash Depot and all the activity. I remember with my parents when I was real little, we'd pull up there and watch the passenger trains load and unload. And it seemed like there were always 20 or 30 people that were getting on board or getting off of the train at that point. Now, of course, a thing of the past. Crossing the tracks there, going eastward there on Palmer Street. And going by Florence Street, and I believe Wyandotte is along here as well, and eventually making our way down to Cherokee. I remember as a kid, right at the end of Palmer Street, there was a huge billboard that was right at the end of the street, right there at Cherokee Street. And I always thought that was the neatest place for a billboard because there really wasn't anything behind it. It was always, you couldn't miss it if you were taking that street. Now we're a little further northward there on Cherokee Street, the Marsango Apartments, site of the former Taylorville High School at one time, back over 100 years ago, or around 100 years ago. Main Cross going through some construction right now between Cherokee and Walnut, so we can't go that direction, so we'll just continue north here on Cherokee Street. It was a beautiful day that day. I don't know if you can kind of pick that out. Not bad for late June. A little warm, but comfortable in the air-conditioned vehicle, and the dash cam is working quite nicely. The technology of these drive-thrus have changed over the years. I think the first one I did was on a VHS handheld camcorder, and either me or my wife was holding the camcorder and driving, and I was even driving and holding it at the same time, but don't tell anybody. Now we're going on Park Street here, Illinois Route 29, heading out to the east. I had great-grandparents that lived along here back in the day, and that would have been the parents of, you may or may know, or at least know the legend of Joe Schaefer. He was my great-uncle, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Schaefer, lived just about a half a block to the west of what was the Spot. Remember the Spot? Had everything right there on that corner where the Casey's is now, right next door to the radio station. New home of the radio station. It's been several locations since I've worked there. And going under the underpass here, I think that was put in the 1920s. If I remember correctly. Not that I remember it being constructed, but I remember seeing some information on it a while back. And coming up to what was a Y intersection, one of those Illinois Highway Department Y intersections, and Kenny Allen had a gasoline station right here on the right-hand side. The Y Inn, which was a tavern, was sort of right there in the center, out to the left. And Route 29 actually went straight from there out toward what was the country club. But in the, I believe, mid-'60s, the highway was reconstructed along the old B&O Railroad tracks, which was located just to the right-hand side of the highway. In fact, one of the old bridges is now used as a path out to the Lake Taylorville area. I'm assuming they're still using that trestle bridge. Now we're heading out to Lake Taylorville, and which is out to the right. It looks more wooded than it really is. There's still some cornfields and such there on the left-hand side. Now crossing one of the streams there that feeds the lake, actually, I believe. And one of its tributaries feeds Burt and Eddy Lake, which is just on the other side of the highway. I didn't go that way. Maybe I will in a future drive-through. I might do another one yet this year, since I have a little more time on my hands to actually get it completed. I already have about 10 hours invested in this thing. Not a lot of traffic for a Saturday. And to the left is the entrance to the Burt and Eddy addition. I guess they still call it that. I'm not sure. But Bertnetti Lake there to the lake to the left. There it is. You can just barely get a glimpse of that. And then we'll turn into, Lake Taylorville with the east side of the spillway and the dam. And I think the next day they actually did some kind of an event in which they added something to the Veterans Memorial there. I think another statue was added to it, but this was the day before. I think they did it the next day. I remember coming out in this general vicinity when the lake was being built when I was a kid. I do have some home movies of that, and maybe I'll get those posted at some point in time. Before the lake was actually filled, you could see the spillway, both sides of the spillway. And if I remember right, the film quality is not that great, but even a poor film quality is better than nothing at all when it comes to historical things. I would imagine in another 5 or 10 years, if I was going to do this, we'd be looking at an 8K video. So things do change. The technology has certainly improved. Going down into the drive there below the spillway, which was added later. I remember to cross the lake at that point when it was being built, you had to go drive all the way around to the Cherokee Street bridge and cross that and come in from the west side. But this was added later on, which is a nice addition because it's a nice drive down in that area, and it's always interesting to see the water over the spillway and how much water actually feeds into that to the South Fork there, south of Taylorville. And the Bertnetti Lake also feeds into that. And there we go, up into the marina area. I would have went over there, but there was a lot of gravel roadways and such, and I really didn't want to get into gravel roads. But this is the marina area. A lot of people camping. Not a lot of people out there, though. It was a real quiet day for a Saturday in June. I was kind of surprised at the lack of activity that was there. Maybe not as many people have boats now than they did when I lived there, which has been almost 40 years ago. Seems like a lot of people had boats. My parents had boats. And here we go, back on 48, heading toward Taylorville, leaving the lake area. And this is, I think I came out the Cherokee Street. I didn't include that video. It's kind of long and quiet, just looking at cornfields. But we got back on Route 48, what we used to call the bypass, there at Cherokee Street, and heading to the west. Here we go, coming up on Shumway Street, South Shumway Street, also known as the Nokomis Road. I used to do radio shows down at Nokomis when I worked at WTIM every week. And I would take that road many, many times each week, getting advertisers and such, and guests line up for a half-hour talk show from Nokomis and the bank there at the time. And a little south of the Utville area here. This is pretty much where that tornado on December 1st, 2018, really, this was sort of the epicenter of that as it crossed Route 48 there on far south Houston Street. the damage in that area as we were doing broadcasts on the TV station, Fox Illinois 2755, and also News Channel 20 from that area. And the devastation was just incredible. But I remember looking across, and a lot of trees in that area were pretty much knocked over. Can't really tell too much about it. You have to look kind of close to see some of those trees if they're still damaged. I remember this underpass was built long before the road was. I'm not sure why. I remember going out there and riding bicycles out there and playing on that underpass even before the bypass was completed. And we're getting back on the old Route 48. And this was, I guess this is kind of an industrial park area where the old Sangamon Paper Company was. But, and of course, the airport grounds on the left and some associated businesses there have popped up. Radio station moved out here, too. I'm not sure why. That was John Ulz's deal, but he moved the radio station out there, and I thought that was a terrible move. But it existed out there for a while until it moved back into town. It was sort of exiled from Taylorville. It wasn't a good idea. But I left the radio station right when that was taking place. So I kind of missed out on that. Thank goodness. That's when I left to move to Danville. And there's the airport, a few hangars there. The skydivers still have an active organization, it appears. And the main terminal building at the airport. I did kind of skip over a little bit there. And as we get a little closer to Vanderveer Street, extreme West Vanderveer, and we're coming into Lincoln Land Community College's campus here. And obviously they're teaching people how to drive a truck. And that plant there, that's that trucking business there on the right, they also have location in Danville. Okay, crossing, coming up on the Old Bowl. Looks like a tavern had a bad experience with a fire. And coming up in the old bowling alley, I would have thought it would have been gone a long time ago. Instead, North Lanes was torn down, which was a much nicer place than the old bowl, but that was just my opinion. Now we're going to make about a 90-degree turn here, so South Spresser ends up turning into West Spresser. Here along the curve, used to be some farm manufacturing companies here located in this area. And we're crossing a deserted section here of the CNIM Railroad, which pretty much borders the Christian County Fairgrounds to the west. And coming into Ace Hardware, which was constructed right at the tail end of my time there in Taylorville. Nice store. Entrance to the fairgrounds. And some of the establishment used to be Country Kitchen Restaurant right there. I remember that. And the old Taylorville Motel. It used to be a truck stop there on the right. I remember a city service gasoline station and even had a diner there. As we cross over Houston Street once again, West School there on the right side, but you wouldn't know it. Looks like it's farm ground now for the most part. remember along there, Charlie Allen had a deep rock station that was right along on the left side, but that takes us back probably into the late 50s, early 60s. And right on the right hand side there on the other side of the stoplights was a place called The Center, and it was a restaurant. I think that's still, I think it's a different building, but it looks a lot like the old one. But it had a dining room. It was a fairly quote-unquote fancy type restaurant, and then it had like something a little more informal coffee shop there associated with it as well. Steel Drugstore there along the Jewel Shopping Center. That's where I worked when I was in high school and first couple of years of college when I was going to Lincoln Land Community College. I did a little bit of everything, sweeping the floors, cleaning the windows, and I was also a pharmacy apprentice. I think they call them pharmacy techs now. The old hit and run. On the left side, Gordon Olds was there, Larrett's Oldsmobile, and the Chrysler dealership was there on the right-hand side for a while. And Angelo's. Little Pete's was there on the left, where McDonald's is now. And the Star gas station, remember that? And, of course, Burger Chef was here on the corner. I see Gary Satterley occasionally. He was the owner there and one of my clients when I sold advertising at the radio station. And he owns, with his partners, several Culver's restaurants now around East Central Illinois, Champaign and Danville in particular. And the phone company there on the left, let's see, Kroger used to be there. It's now Family Dollar. Remember, C.W. Ford was there on the right. And John's Barber Shop. I used to get my hair cut there when I was a kid. There on the left. And the BP station. And Harrison, Lincoln Mercury, Edsel was located there on the corner. And yeah, I donated some bucks. I'm not sure what they were collecting for, but it takes guts to stand in the middle of the road to ask people for money. So I think they nabbed me a couple of times that day. And we're heading toward the square, back of Morton's there on the right. Rainey's Drugstore there on the left. I remember that fire, getting a phone call that morning. My mom worked at Sherman's, which was down the block, and somebody told her the whole square was on fire. Oh, my gosh. And it was Rainey's. Howard's Beauty Salon used to hang around there. Steve Oliver and I, they were good friends of the Howards, and Howard's vacationed a lot down in Arkansas, and we got to use their apartment for playing cards and watching people down on the square do crazy things on Friday nights and Saturday nights. I remember playing Frisbee and ending up with a Frisbee on that little awning there in front of the bank. I'm not sure it was the same awning, but we had to climb up the side of the building to get the Frisbee back. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I think. Spent a lot of time at the Capitol Theater. What they've done to that, I think, is sad, but, you know, to each his own, I guess. That would have been a magnificent auditorium for not only movies but other events. George's Candy Shop there, looking a little worse for wear. Hopefully they'll be able to do some things with that building. And that theater marquee and that whole front of that theater is just amazing to me because you can pull out old pictures taken from the 40s and it still looks the same. That's just simply amazing. And it's too bad they've covered some of those other buildings there on the east side of the square with those ceramic, that ceramic porcelain cover that's in front. And we're going down Washington Street here, and we'll continue to trek there along the buildings. And coming up on parking lot, First Trust and Savings, they had that drive-in, remember, with the TV screens and the tellers, and there's Schaefer Funeral Home. Again, he was my great uncle. And there's the drive-in bank. I remember when they put those in. Oh, my gosh, you got to see yourself on TV. when you drove through? Yeah, come on. Admit it. You went through there and watched yourself on TV. There's the jailhouse. And we're rocking down Webster Street here. Boy, that is rough. Again, I have mixed emotions about the brick streets. I think they're great, but boy, they need a lot of work. Crossing Market Street here, and that's where the Gilbert Large facility was. And I think it's sad that they got rid of that because I think there was a lot of potential in that structure. It seemed to be solid, and boy, you could have done so many things with that structure. It was an amazing building, and it's a shame that it had to be taken out. Someone made that decision. It wasn't mine. Okay, now we're going to go left here on on Franklin Street, actually. This would be coming up here on East Franklin from West Franklin as we cross Main Street. And I remember, the American Legion there in Gibson's, remember, before they became a Pomida and moved out to the north, was located there. I remember buying a lot of stuff. I bought a set of snow tires there, for $10 a piece once. It was a pretty good place to buy tires, evidently. And Memorial School. Never attended classes there. I did have a summertime French class that I took, and I remember it was, summertime, and after class, it was on the first floor. The windows would be open and stuff, and we'd jump out the windows after class, get on our bikes, and take off, go out to the park pool or something. Going down Main Street, I was born at the old St. Vincent's Hospital there on Walnut. No sign of that anymore. And we're coming up on Palmer Street here as we cross the railroad tracks. Just a single row of tracks. I remember there used to be at least 2, maybe 3 sets of tracks at one time. Entering Manners Park. For the size of town that Taylorville is, Manners Park is really tremendous. I do miss some of the playground equipment. Not that I would play on them, but they were always interesting to see. The giant slide and the witch's hat and some of those playground equipment pieces that probably broke a few ankles, or at least sprang a few ankles, and I don't think anybody was seriously injured on those things, but obviously the park board decided that they were too much of a liability, so that was the end of that. I think most of them are gone. I don't see a lot of picnic tables out there either. Don't people picnic in the park anymore? For gosh sakes, things have really changed, I guess. And the banquet hall there on the right, I remember going to family reunions and such there. And the Chautauqua building opened up and actually being used for something. And that was good. Instead of a storage facility. And there is some playground equipment there to the west of the Chautauqua building. And we're going to hang a left here and take the long road through the park. Once again, don't see any picnic tables, don't see any playground equipment. It is mowed, it looks great. But what are you going to do? Guess you can always throw a blanket on the ground and sit and read, if nothing else, or just enjoy nature. I remember on the other side here were the shuffleboards And remember the rings that you would swing back and forth, the big rings? I mean, how many of us have probably smashed fingers with those heavy rings that used to swing back and forth? And those are gone now. Getting rid of those old restrooms was probably a good thing. Those were pretty treacherous. Ooh, scary. And the pool. Spent a lot of time there when I was younger. I remember riding home some afternoons when thunderstorms would pass through and they'd close the pool, getting on a bike and riding home during a thunderstorm and pouring down rain. That was always fun. And the old Boy Scout pavilion. And going down to the lake here and the overlook. Certainly changed from what it used to be. By the way, we'll not mention Devil's Backbone. Anybody familiar with that? That was before we hit the lake there. I think it was on the other side, the first winding loop around the park. Never quite understood the significance of that, but maybe it's good that I didn't. And coming up here on the first exit out of the park there, but we're not taking that one. They've really improved this area of the park, I think. It's great to see that lake without the moss, the green moss growing on it. Looks like they're keeping that water aerated. And that's good. Never really fished there, but I know a lot of people that did. And coming out on Florence Street, which is the second way out. And once again, a rough brick street that could stand a little TLC. Okay, we're going north here on South Main Street toward the square once again. We cut a little bit of that out. It's kind of redundant. And a little redundancy, though, on some of these main roads, I think is appropriate. As we come up on St. Mary's School there on the left. And Memorial School on the right. Building's over 100 years old, served as a junior high for a long time before the junior high addition was added to the high school, which from what I understand will be torn down here before too long, as a new addition is planned for the high school. As I was there for my 50th high school reunion, we took a school tour of the high school, and it is truly magnificent what they have done with that building since I was there in 1972. I mean, it is really a masterpiece, and I think the school district is to be commended for the work that they've done in improving the situation and certainly making Taylorville attractive for families to move in when you've got a good, solid school district and a good, solid school building where students can even get a lot of what appears to be upper college type classes. It's truly amazing. And Walnut Street, where the Antlers Hotel, Fresino Hotel, used to be, there on the corner where the radio station was off the back. Scary place when I was there at the radio station because there really wasn't any activity in that hotel other than the varmints. I remember the restroom we had to go through was off the old Zebra room there at the Fresino Hotel. You'd take a flashlight down into the restroom with you, and you'd shine the light down there, and you had to make sure that the coast was clear of the potential development of a collection of varmints down the hallway. So anyway, that was one of the moments at the radio station that I'll never forget. And we're on Vine Street, yet another brick street. This one wasn't too bad, but I think it's probably one of the lesser traveled. Brick streets as we cross Main Street there, and of course the City Hall. And there used to be a gas station there on the corner. I remember that, but the A&P grocery store was here on the right, which is now the Taylorville Library. And I frequented that a couple of times, I think, in doing some research. And, of course, the old Kroger store there on the right, and Luster's Ford there on the right-hand side, which that building is interesting as well. And Reenie's drugstore there on the right. I loved going there on Saturday morning and getting a donut and Coke or something and sitting there at the either the bar and listening to the Saturday morning quarterbacks discuss the tornado game the night before. West side of the square once again. Cohen Furniture there, former Cohen Furniture. And going down Market Street, I remember Holiday Sports. I was a slot car racer, and they had that slot car track in the basement there at Holidays, and I loved that place. Spent a lot of time there. And where the old Gilbert Large building is now a parking lot, which is unfortunate. As we journey down Market Street, once again, one of the many streets in town that could use a little TLC. I remember, was it Boyd Lumber Company was there on the right? I think that was the name of it. It's been a while. I remember going to the doctor there when, I can't think of his name. I'll think of it later. My store there on the left. I remember going there many, many times. And coming up on Shumway Street once again. You know, I mentioned the tornado. A lot of these homes here in this area, you can tell, have been remodeled and certainly improved since even before the tornado, although there's still signs of damage here and there. Main Cross and Shumway Street. I remember years ago, Shumway Street used to end at Park Street, and in order to go out onto Route 48, you had to turn left on Park Street and go all the way down to Cheney, and then hit the four-way stop sign there at Cheney Street. I think that extension here of taking Shumway all the way to Spresser probably sometime in the early to mid-'60s that was done, but you used to have to turn left there. Once again, Spresser Street, the old Route 48. And coming up on the Jewel Shopping Center, I mentioned Steel Drug Store earlier, was located there in that eastern unit there, underneath the awning there. I remember working there in high school and college. It was a great job. Loved working there. Lauren Withrow hired me. He was the manager and chief pharmacist there. And we're going once again out toward Taylorville High School here from Cheney Street. And you can barely see the high school, but of course we're coming on the gym there, coming up on the gym on the left. It was built even before the high school was, back in the 30s. It was, I think it was a WPA project back in the mid-30s when I originally built a high school. It's truly a magnificent building, and the improvements that have been made over the last 40 years since I was there, 50 years actually, have been truly amazing. Going by Brown and Sons was over here on the left. Remember my dad buying television sets there, RCAs. The old Dairy Queen, Brunn's family used to run that years ago. You might remember Ed Brunn sold Electrolux vacuum cleaners. Good guy. And crossing the old extension there to Webster Street, Mount Auburn Road there, takes us out to the left, but going by Bidwell Street here. The junior high is located on the right, and for the life of me, I don't know why they put it in that way. The athletic fields were on the west side. The locker rooms were on the east side of the building. The back of the hospital faces the front of the junior high school. I really think they put that building in there backwards. Does anybody else have any feelings on that? And of course, the Grand Shopping Center where Grant's used to be was the main anchor department store there. And it's still sports and businesses. Sandy Duncan Drive. They're just to the east of the shopping center. And that's where we are right now as we turn back on Bidwell Street, heading back where we just were. I guess they still call it Grand Plaza, interestingly enough. It used to be a steak place, I think, right there. Sirloin Stockade, maybe. And to the left there off of Webster used to be the North Lanes. Bill Fellon, I believe, owned and ran that. Great bowling alley. Used to bowl junior league when I was a kid. This used to be a 2-lane road around here. Of course, the Valentine Estate was there to the left. Huge area of ground from the original stoplights. You know, if you gave anyone directions in Taylorville, you'd always have to go, well, at the stoplights, here's where you go. Because there was only one set of lights in town. But the Valentine Estate pretty much blanketed that entire area there to the left. It was walled in, a lot of growth around it, and it used to support a lot of birds. People complained about the starlings and the crows and such that would take up residence there. And this was the site of the original stoplights in town. As we continue southward on Webster Street, past what was the Burger Chef, now Walgreens. Masterson Funeral Home there on the right. Yeah, a lot of changes in Taylorville over the last 50 years, or at least 45 years before, as I left, about 45 years ago. But it's always good to make the drive through. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and you can check out the others on my website. That's at dougquick.com. It's also Central Illinois' online broadcast museum. So there's a lot of memories there. So enjoy it, and thanks for visiting.